Have you ever, just looked out your window? Maybe seen a big tree or watched a bird fly past or even just stared up at the sky and sort of wondered, how does all this fit together? Everything living, everything non-living. How does it connect? What holds it all together?
That's a really fundamental question, isn't it? And it's right at the heart of life sciences. Understanding those connections, well, it's not just about learning facts for a test.
Right.
It's more about appreciating this incredibly complex dance of existence on our planet.
Exactly. And, well, that's our mission today. Especially for Mr. Chi's grade 10 life sciences class, this deep dive is meant to be a shortcut, kind of, to really getting those core ideas from your Biospheres to Ecosystems chapter. I want to demystify some of the tricky stuff, maybe spark a few aha moments, and give you insights that'll be super useful for your projects, your experiments, and honestly, just for looking at the world around you differently.
Absolutely. Grasping these basic principles is just key to seeing that intricate web of life. And it's particularly valuable, I think, as you go on to see how these big ideas actually play out in real places, like right here in South Africa.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're going to start really big picture, looking at Earth's major spheres.
Right.
Then we'll zoom in a bit to the different biomes, on land and in the water. After that, we'll break down ecosystems, the living and non-living bits.
Okay.
And finally, wrap up with how energy and nutrients flow through it all, keeping everything going. So yeah, get ready for a deep dive that should hopefully make your life sciences class click.
Sounds good. So to really start at that largest scale, we need to talk about the biosphere.
Okay, the biosphere. What is that exactly?
Basically, it's all the living organisms on Earth. Think of it as the global ecosystem. But the key thing is it doesn't exist on its own.
Right. It interacts with other things.
Exactly. It's constantly interacting with 3 other major spheres.
Okay, so what's the first big sphere the biosphere is interacting with?
Well, the first one is the hydrosphere. Hydro means water, right?
Right.
So this is all the water. Oceans, rivers, lakes, groundwater, even the water vapor hanging in the air. It's not just there. It's a dynamic environment for aquatic life. And there's this constant exchange of moisture between water bodies and living things.
Makes sense. Water's everywhere. Okay, what about the ground, the land itself?
That would be the lithosphere. This is essentially the Earth's solid outer layer, the crust. So it includes the continents, the islands, and even the ocean floor.
Yeah.
And it's not just static rock, it provides minerals, shelters, organisms from the Earth's core heat. It's an active part of the system.
Right. And then the air, the stuff we breathe.
That's the atmosphere, that layer of gases surrounding the planet. Absolutely vital.
Why vital? I mean, breathing, obviously.
Well, yes, breathing has the oxygen most organisms need, but it also regulates the planet's temperature, and crucially, it acts like a shield.
A shield? From what?
From harmful ultraviolet radiation from the sun. The atmosphere absorbs a lot of it, which basically makes life on the surface possible.
Okay, so biosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere. But you said they interact.
Profoundly. That's where it gets really interesting. They aren't separate boxes. They're constantly influencing each other. It's almost impossible to affect one without seeing knock-on effects in the others.
Can you give an example? Something concrete.
Sure. Think about, say, deforestation, cutting down large areas of forest.
Okay, that's the biosphere of the living trees.
Exactly. But what happens next? When the trees are gone, the soil that's the lithosphere is exposed.
So it washes away more easily.
Right. Erosion increases. That soil then gets washed into rivers, the hydrosphere potentially clouding the water, adding sediment.
Okay.
And at the same time, fewer trees mean less carbon dioxide is being absorbed from the atmosphere, so CO2 levels might rise.
Wow. So one action, cutting trees, ripples through all the other spheres.
Precisely. It's a perfect illustration of that interconnectedness. It's easy to picture them as layers, but things like dust from the lithosphere blowing across oceans can actually fertilize parts of the hydrosphere or biosphere thousands of kilometers away. It's all linked.
Okay, that makes the big picture much clearer. So from these massive global systems, let's zoom in a bit to biomes. What are they?
Right, biomes. These are large geographical areas that share similar climate conditions and geography.
And that determines the life found there.
Yes, those climate factors, primarily rainfall or precipitation and temperature, are the main drivers determining what kinds of plants and animals can survive and thrive in that specific biome. Things like latitude, altitude, and mountains also play a big role in shaping those climate patterns.
Okay, and you mentioned biomes can be in water or on land.
Wait.
Let's start with the water ones, aquatic biomes.
Yeah, it makes sense given how much of the Earth is water. Aquatic biomes are generally split into two main types based on salt content.
Salt, so freshwater and saltwater.
Exactly. First, you have freshwater biomes. Very low salt concentration, usually less than 1%. Think about ponds, lakes, streams, rivers, wetlands, all those familiar places.
Got it. And the salty ones.
Those are the marine biomes, much higher salt content, around 3.5% on average. This covers the vast oceans, of course, but also includes really important areas like coral reefs and estuaries.
Estuaries, where rivers meet the sea.
Precisely, where fresh and salt water mix. And it's worth noting, in marine biomes, things like algae are hugely important producers. They create a lot of the oxygen we breathe and absorb a ton of CO2.
Now, you mentioned South Africa earlier. For the grade 10s listening, our marine environment is quite special, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. South Africa has this incredibly long coastline, over 3,000 kilometers, stretching all the way from the Namibian border around to Mozambique.
Wow.
And it's quite a rugged coast, lots of rocky shores, high winds are common.
Right.
We also have a huge number of estuaries. I think the count is 343 along the coast.
343, that's a lot.
It is. And about 2/3 of them are on the East Coast. These estuaries are incredibly productive places, nurseries for fish, homes for birds, supporting a whole lot of life.
And the ocean currents are different on each coast, too, right?
Very different. You've got the Warmagulas current flowing down the East Coast, which supports a really high diversity of species, lots of different types of marine life.
Okay.
Then on the Southwest Coast, you have the cold Benguela upwelling system. It's colder, but the upwelling brings nutrients up from the deep ocean, supporting massive numbers of marine animals like huge shoals of fish and the seals and birds that feed on them.
So warm means more types, cold means more numbers, generally speaking.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. And we even have coral reefs.
Really? In South Africa?
Yes, up in the warmer subtropical waters north of Lake St. Lucia in KwaZulu-Natal. They're built by tiny coral animals creating calcium carbonate skeletons. They provide food, shelter, and they're vital for protecting the coastline from wave damage.
Fascinating. Okay, let's move on to land now. Terrestrial biomes. How are these classified?
Terrestrial biomes, the ones on land, are mainly classified based on their dominant vegetation type, along with the climate and geography. Your textbook, I believe, outlines 8 main ones found here in South Africa.
Right, let me see. Grassland, savanna, succulent karoo, namakaroo, forest, fynbos, thicket, and desert.
That's the list.
So for anyone working on, say, a biome poster or maybe a biomes advertisement project,
Yes.
understanding the specifics, the climate, the soil type, the plants, flora, the animals, fauna, that's really your key to doing well. Knowing, for example, that the savanna biome covers a huge part of southern Africa, has those hot, wet summers and cool, dry winters, that directly tells you why you find animals like kudu, impala lions, elephants there. They're adapted to that specific environment.
Absolutely. And what's really incredible is seeing the adaptations that emerge in these biomes, sometimes under really tough conditions. Take the Fynbos biome, for example, mainly in the Western Cape.
Keen fynbos,
Yeah.
known for its clans, right?
Hugely known for its plants. It's unbelievably biodiverse, over 9,000 plant species, and something like 75% of them are rare or threatened, found nowhere else.
Wow.
But what's also fascinating is its relationship with fire. Many Fynbos plants are actually adapted to fire. Some seeds will only germinate after they've been exposed to the intense heat of a wildfire.
So they need the fire.
In many cases, yes, and some proteas, iconic Fynbos plants, hold onto their seeds in the cone on the bush for a year or more. It's called serotiny, basically waiting for a fire to come through and trigger release and germination. It's evolution in action, adapting to disturbance.
Amazing. Okay, so we've gone from spheres to biomes. Now let's get even more specific, ecosystems. How is an ecosystem different from a biome?
That's a great question. While a biome is a large region defined by climate, an ecosystem is more localized. It includes all the living organisms, the biotic components in a specific area, and the non-living physical environment, the abiotic components that they interact with.
So it's the living and the non-living interacting in one place.
Exactly. It's about that specific interaction, that dance between the biotic and abiotic, working together to maintain a kind of balance within that defined area, whether it's a small pond or a large forest patch.
Okay, so let's break down those components. You said biotic components, the living things. What kinds of roles do they play in an ecosystem?
Right, the biotic cast. At the very bottom, the foundation, you have the producers.
Producers, but like plants.
Yes, mainly green plants, but also algae and tiny phytoplankton in aquatic systems. We call them autotrophs because they make their own food, usually through photosynthesis, using sunlight, CO2, and water. They're literally converting light energy into chemical energy that fuels almost everything else.
Okay, so they make the food. Who eats it?
Then come the consumers, or heterotrophs. They can't make their own food, so they get energy by consuming other organisms, and we can break them down further.
How so?
Well, you have primary consumers, which are the herbivores animals that eat the producers, the plants. Think of buck, zebra, grasshoppers.
Okay, plant eaters.
Then secondary consumers. These are carnivores that eat the primary consumers, like a lion eating a zebra or a bird eating a grasshopper.
Meat eaters eating plant eaters.
Right. And you can even have tertiary consumers, which are carnivores that eat other carnivores.
Okay. What about animals that eat both?
Good point. Those are omnivores. They eat both plants and animals. Humans are a classic example, but also think of baboons or even crocodiles sometimes.
And what about the ones that eat dead things?
Ah, yes. You have scavengers, like vultures or hyenas, which feed on the carcasses of dead animals.
Okay.
And slightly different are detritivores. These are organisms like earthworms or millipedes that feed on detritus, that's organic waste, like dead leaves, fragments of dead organisms.
So producers make food, consumers eat it in various ways. But what happens to all the waste, the dead bodies? Does it just pile up?
Excellent question. And that's where the absolutely crucial, often overlooked group comes in, the decomposers.
The cleanup crew.
Exactly. Nature's ultimate recyclers. These are mainly bacteria and fungi. They break down complex organic matter, dead plants, dead animals, waste products outside their bodies.
How does that help?
Well, this decomposition process releases essential nutrients back into the environment, into the soil, into the water in simple, inorganic forms that the producers, the plants, can then absorb and use again to grow. They make sure nothing is wasted. If something is called biodegradable, it just means these decomposers can break it down. They keep the whole cycle going.
Incredible. Okay, so that's the living side, the biotic. Now, what about the abiotic components, the non-living stuff?
Right, the non-living factors. These are the physical and chemical elements of the environment that significantly influence the organisms living there. We can group them too.
Okay, what's the first group?
First, we have physiographic factors. These relate to the physical shape and features of the land.
Like how steep it is.
Exactly. Slope is a big one. Steep slopes tend to have faster water runoff, which means less water soaking in, more soil erosion, and often thinner, less fertile soil. So plant growth can be limited. Gentle slopes, on the other hand, allow water to penetrate, reduce erosion, and generally support more vegetation.
Makes sense. What else falls under physiographic?
Altitude, the height above sea level. As you go higher, it generally gets colder, windier, sometimes drier, and the types of species you find often change. There's usually less diversity at very high altitudes.
Okay.
And then there's aspect, which is simply the direction a slope faces. This can make a huge difference, especially here in South Africa. Southeastern-facing slopes tend to get more rain and mist, so they're often cooler, moister, and have richer vegetation compared to the hotter, drier, northwestern-facing slopes.
Interesting how just facing a different direction changes everything. Okay, what's the next abiotic category?
Next up are edaphic factors. This is all about the soil.
Soil. What about it?
Things like its composition, its structure, its water content, its pH, they all have a major impact on what can live there, especially plants.
Yeah.
Take pH, the acidity, or alkalinity.
Yeah.
How does that matter? Well, some plants thrive in acidic soil. Others prefer alkaline. There's that classic example of hydrangea flowers.
Yeah, they change color. Right.
Exactly. They act like natural pH indicators. They tend to be blue in acidic soil and pink or reddish in alkaline soil. It's a direct visual cue of the soil chemistry influencing the plant.
Cool. And soil structure.
Yeah.
Like sandy versus clay.
Absolutely critical. Soil structure, determined by the size of the particles, affects drainage and water retention. Clay soil has tiny particles, holds a lot of water, which can be good, but it can also get waterlogged.
Right.
Sandy soil has large particles, water drains through it very quickly, so it can be quite dry. Loam, which is a mix of sand, silt, and clay, is often considered ideal because it holds water reasonably well, but also drains okay.
And this is where those practical skills come in. If you do that experiment in class, investigating the water-retaining properties of soil. You actually get to see this firsthand, how much water clay holds compared to sand. It's not just theory. It directly shows why certain plants grow better in certain soils.
Precisely. And connecting that back, the soil's structure and its pH fundamentally determine which plants can establish themselves. And since plants are the producers...
They form the base of the whole food web there.
Exactly. The soil dictates the start of the ecosystem in many ways.
Okay, so physiographic, edaphic, what else?
Then we have the climatic factors. These are probably the most obvious ones we think about.
Like sunlight.
Sunlight, absolutely fundamental. It's the primary energy source for almost all ecosystems through photosynthesis. It drives everything indirectly.
And temperature.
Temperature, yes. It affects rates of evaporation, transpiration in plants, influences animal metabolism, triggers seasonal changes like migration or hibernation. And again, organisms have amazing adaptations. Well, plants like xerophyte succulents, for example, are adapted to survive in hot, dry conditions with minimal water loss, while hydrophytes live in water. Animals might be endothermic, like us mammals, regulating our own body temperature, or ectothermic, like reptiles, relying on external heat sources.
Got it. And water itself is a climatic factor?
Water, obviously crucial. It's the main component of cells. Its availability varies hugely across the planet, leading to those different plant adaptations we mentioned: xerophytes, mesophytes in moderate conditions, hydrophytes in wet places.
Okay. Any other abiotic factors?
Just briefly, air and gases. Wind can affect evaporation rates, but it's also important for pollination for some plants and for dispersing seeds.
Right.
And the composition of the air itself, that mix of about 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, a small bit of carbon dioxide, water vapor, etc. These gases are constantly being used and recycled by living organisms, as we'll see with nutrient cycles.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of factors, living and non-living.
It is, but having this comprehensive understanding of biotic and abiotic factors is exactly what you need if you're tasked with, say, studying a terrestrial ecosystem for a project.
How so?
Because it gives you the framework to not just list what you see, there's a tree, there's an insect, the soil is sandy, but to start analyzing why. Why that tree? Why that insect? How does the sandy soil influence them? How does the aspect of the slope affect the moisture? It lets you interpret your observations.
Right, connecting the dots. Okay, let's shift to the engine driving all this. Energy flow and nutrient cycles. Starting with energy. When we talk about energy flow, what are trophic levels?
Okay, energy flow. It's basically about how energy moves through the ecosystem, mainly through feeding. A trophic level just refers to an organism's position in the food chain, what it eats and what eats it.
So producers are one level, herbivores the next, and so on.
Exactly. Producers are the first trophic level. Primary consumers, herbivores, are the second. Secondary consumers, carnivores eating herbivores, are the third, and so on up the chain.
Okay. Now, what's this about a 90% energy loss rule? That sounds really inefficient.
It does, doesn't it? But it's fundamental. Here's the crucial concept. When energy is transferred from one trophic level to the next, only about 10% of the energy actually becomes incorporated into the biomass of the next level.
Only 10%. Where does the other 90% go?
It's mostly lost. A large portion is lost as heat during metabolic processes, just the energy cost of living, moving, respiring. Some energy is in parts of the organism that don't get eaten, and some is in waste products or undigested food.
Wow. So 90% is lost at every single step of the food chain.
Pretty much, yes. It's a massive energy tax at each level.
And that's why there are way fewer lions than impalas and way fewer impalas than, say, acacia trees.
Precisely. There's simply not enough energy available at the higher trophic levels to support huge populations. The energy base gets smaller and smaller as you go up. That's why food pyramids, especially energy pyramids, are always wide at the bottom and narrow sharply at the top.
Okay, that makes sense now. So how do we visualize this energy flow? You mentioned food chains.
Right. A food chain is the simplest way. It shows a linear sequence of who eats whom. For example, green plant, impala, a leopard, bacteria, decomposer, straight line transfer.
Okay. And the food pyramid you mentioned.
The food pyramid is a graphical way to show the amount of energy, or sometimes biomass, the total mass of organisms, or even the number of individuals at each trophic level. Like I said, energy pyramids are always triangular because of that 90% loss.
The ecosystems are rarely just simple chains, are they?
No, rarely. That's where the food web comes in. A food web is much more realistic. It shows multiple interconnected food chains, illustrating that most organisms eat more than one thing and are eaten by more than one thing. It shows the complex network of feeding relationships.
So it's like a messy web instead of a neat line.
Exactly. And this complexity is important. It raises a key question. What happens if you remove one species from a simple food chain versus removing one from a complex food web?
I guess the food web would handle it better.
Yeah.
If one food source disappears, maybe the predator has other options.
You've got it. The complexity of the food web generally makes the ecosystem more resilient, more stable. If one link is broken, there are often alternative pathways for energy to flow. A simple food chain is much more fragile. Break one link, and everything above it might collapse.
Right, so understanding food webs helps you analyze how stable an ecosystem might be. That's definitely useful for projects where you have to trace food chains or think about interdependence.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's energy flow, a one-way street with lots lost as heat. But what about the actual physical matter, the building blocks of life?
Ah, there must be the nutrient cycle.
Exactly. Unlike energy, matter isn't really lost, it gets recycled. Nutrient cycles describe the movement and exchange of essential elements like water, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen from the non-living environment into living organisms and then back again.
And decomposers are key here again.
Absolutely central. They break down dead organic matter and waste, returning nutrients to the soil or water in forms that producers can use, keeping the cycle going. Let's quickly look at a few major ones.
Okay, like the water cycle or hydrological cycle.
Yes, probably the most familiar. You have evaporation water turning into vapor from oceans, lakes, rivers. You also have transpiration, which is water vapor released from plants. Surprisingly, this accounts for about half of the evaporation over land.
Half.
Wow. Then that vapor rises, cools, and undergoes condensation to form clouds. When the droplets get heavy enough, you get precipitation rain, snow, hail. Some of that water runs off into rivers and back to the oceans, and some undergoes infiltration, soaking into the ground where it can be stored as groundwater or slowly make its way back to surface waters, often getting purified in the process.
Okay, water cycling around. What about oxygen?
The oxygen cycle is beautifully linked to another cycle. The main processes are respiration and photosynthesis. Most living things take in oxygen for cellular respiration to release energy from food, and they release carbon dioxide. Plants, algae, and some bacteria do the opposite during photosynthesis. They take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So it's this elegant, complementary exchange, keeping oxygen levels relatively stable in the atmosphere.
Nice. And that links to the carbon cycle. You mentioned CO2. Carbon's super important, right? Building block of life.
Absolutely fundamental. Carbon is the backbone of all organic molecules. So how does it move? Well, combustion, burning fossil fuels or wood, releases CO2 into the atmosphere.
Okay.
Photosynthesis is the main way carbon leaves the atmosphere, as plants take in CO2 to build their tissues. Carbon moves through the food web as organisms meet each other. Metabolism involves these organic molecules.
Right.
Cellular respiration, as we just said, releases CO2 back into the atmosphere as organisms break down food for energy. And finally, decay, when organisms die, decomposers break them down, also releasing CO2.
So it's constantly moving between the atmosphere, plants, animals, and the earth.
Yes, in various forms. Okay, one last crucial one, the nitrogen cycle.
Nitrogen, why is that so important? It's most of the air, isn't it?
It is. About 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen gas, N2, and it's critical essential for building amino acids, which make proteins, and nucleic acids like DNA and RNA. But here's the catch.
What's the catch?
Most organisms, including plants and animals, cannot use nitrogen gas directly from the atmosphere. It's in a very stable, unusable form.
So how do we get it?
It needs to be fixed. Nitrogen fixation is the process of converting atmospheric N2 gas into usable compounds like ammonia, NH3, or nitrates, NO3. This can happen through high-energy events like lightning strikes.
Oh, lightning.
Yes, but much more significantly, it's done by specific types of bacteria. Some live freely in the soil, others live in special nodules on the roots of certain plants, particularly legumes like beans and peas.
Okay, so bacteria fix the nitrogen. Then what?
Then plants can absorb these usable forms, ammonia and nitrates, through their roots. That's absorption. Animals then get their nitrogen by eating the plants or by eating other animals that ate plants. That's ingestion.
Got it. And then when things die?
Back to the decomposers. When plants and animals die or produce waste, decomposition occurs. Bacteria and fungi break down the organic matter. This process includes ammonification, where nitrogen is converted back into ammonia. Then other bacteria carry out nitrification, converting ammonia into nitrates and then into nitrates, which plants can readily use again.
So it goes back to plants.
Yeah.
Does then it go back to the air?
Yes, there's one more step, denitrification. Different bacteria convert some of the nitrates back into nitrogen gas, N2, which returns to the atmosphere, completing the cycle. It's a really complex, mostly bacteria-driven process, vital for all life.
Wow. Okay, so we've really covered a lot. We went from the huge interacting spheres of Earth down through the distinct biomes like fynbos or savanna,
Mm-hmm.
into the nitty-gritty of ecosystems with all the living and non-living parts interacting.
Right.
And finally look at how energy flows through it all and how essential nutrients like water, carbon, and nitrogen get endlessly recycled. What a journey.
It really covers the fundamentals. And by understanding these concepts, spheres, biomes, ecosystems, energy, nutrients, you're not just, ticking boxes for your life sciences class. You're actually gaining this incredibly powerful lens.
What do you mean?
Well, you start to see how your own local environment works. You can understand why certain plants grow where they do, why certain animals are found there. And importantly, you start to see how human actions, even seemingly small ones, can have ripple effects through these interconnected systems.
Yeah, like that deforestation example earlier.
Exactly. It's about truly appreciating the astonishing interdependence that sustains absolutely everything, including us.
So here's the thought for everyone listening, especially Mr. Cheese class.
Hmm.
The next time you step outside, or maybe even just look closely at a pot plant on your windowsill, try to actively spot these things. Ask yourself, how many of these cycles and interactions can I see happening right here, right now?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even think, what's one tiny change I could make maybe in my garden, maybe in my habits, that could positively impact the little ecosystem right around me?
That's a wonderful takeaway. This deep dive into really the blueprint of life just underscores that everything is connected. Your journey in life sciences isn't just about memorizing terms, it's about developing that ability to see the patterns, the relationships, the incredible complex web that holds our world together, and maybe, like you said, inspiring some new questions along the way.